Jamie asked Peter to do some undercover work on himself, just to see what this celebrity had been up to all these years. After some sleuthing, Peter found some jaw-dropping secrets, leading back to the fact that his aunt and uncle were once Jamie's right-hand people. But Jamie stayed silent, raising suspicions. She asked Peter to keep investigating. Just after Peter hung up, Ross dialed the hotline for the night squad. He remembered this number as if it were his social media password, but sensed that Ross seemed a bit jittery. Peter reassured him not to worry, promising to take him out for breakfast tomorrow. After hanging up, Peter returned to the Rambo Hotel the next day after work. As soon as he entered, something felt wrong. The agents vanished. The hotel was dark. Peter rushed to Ross' room. Just then, Helen, disguised as a maid, arrived with a gun in one hand and the true meaning of room service in the other. No response, she kicked the door open. Told target was absent. He urgently told Helen to escape. It was a carefully planned trap. Building lost power, internet, and signals, isolating it, and making eliminating Ross easy. Meanwhile, night agent Peter had arrived just in time, and Helen was sprinting with Ross towards the escape route. Assassin Paul spotted Ross, fired instantly. Peter retaliated, escaping with Ross like in a game. Ross kept asking Peter where the 6 agents had vanished to where they on coffee break. Peter guessed that it was clearly the handiwork of some high-ranking official, but now was not the time for that. Paul, armed with a silenced pistol, was hot on their heels, and the pair had no choice but to run for their lives. At this moment, Helen gracefully entered the cloakroom, stopped a maid with a stun gun, and masterfully draped her coat to cover her glamorous figure. Peter realized his gun was out of bullets, so he had to think on his feet. Before he could finish his thought, he shattered a window and peeked down to get. They had no choice but to jump. But before Peter could finish his sentence, he collapsed heavily. Ross hurriedly asked what was wrong. Peter urged Ross to jump quickly. Just then, Paul reached the door, realizing it was locked. He raised his gun and shot at the door. Just as he broke it open, Ross jumped right behind him. Peter and Ross fled down the corridor. Paul, Miss Helen chased them out. Ross stood out in the crowd in pajamas, so Peter hurried to find a changed room. When Peter noticed Ross had bored a customer's phone, he raised an eyebrow, asking what in the world was going on. Ross replied he had no phone in the safe house, so the enemy, but that didn't matter. He needed to call the White House to expose who moved his agents. Shu, in a meeting, answered the call and listened to Peter. He ordered everyone out, leaving just 2 Safety Bureau officials for the emergency meeting. This was a truly independent meeting, analyzing suspects who knew Ross' location, including FBI Deputy Director Jamie. Shu told Safety Bureau's Mark to call him. She was genuinely concerned about Peter and Ross' safety, hoping they would return to the White House, but Peter sensed danger there and declined Shu's invitation. While on the call, Helen arrived at the store, meticulously checked out, and prepared to leave. What Peter and Ross didn't realize was that they had just narrowly escaped an assassination. The two discussed where they should hide next. Compared to Peter's obedience, Ross' ideas were more radical. He wanted to uncover what happened to his aunt, uncle, and who hired a killer against him. Left with no choice, Peter compromised and returned with Ross to his aunt and uncle's house. Seeing the blood and the carpet broke his heart. Did they kill her? Ross asked sadly. 5 times Peter responded. Ross understood that this time they were on a mission to invest. They said there were traitors in the White House, and only 7 days left for the nation. It seems her intel was related to someone codenamed Osprey. Peter hurriedly urged Ross to think if he had any more clues, while Ross closed his eyes to recollect. We even found the car in that little cabin. That cabin. Ross suddenly shouted, excitement bubbling over. Ross knew where the woods were because his aunt and uncle had built a cabin. He drove Peter right to the spot. As soon as he entered, Peter knew they were in the right place. The cabin was clearly tidied up, indicating recent visitors. This meant the hard drive was likely here. Sure enough, while Peter searched carefully, he found a loose brick, and when he pried it up, a portable hard drive appeared. Quick, see what's on it, Peter exclaimed. But it turned out the hard drive was heavily encrypted. Even tech genius Ross couldn't crack it. This was no ordinary security. And the security was top-notch, like international-level encryption. It was as scary as it sounds, he said in amazement. Suddenly, Peter realized that 2781 was strikingly familiar. It was the code number mentioned in last year's subway bombing. He never expected to return to this spot after such a long detour. He quickly took out his phone to call Xu for help in cracking the hard drive. As Xu answered, he said Jamie moved the agents. Ordered via her desk computer, Jamie was murdered. After hearing this, Peter immediately shared his discovery about the hard drive, but Xu urged him to rush back to the White House with Ross, saying their lives were in grave danger. Ross shook his head vigorously, but seeing Peter's hesitation, Xu issued a final command: emergency meeting. High energy alert Ed. The news of FBI Deputy Director Jamie being shot to death was now on the table. Upon hearing this, Peter couldn't believe it. After 30 years in the FBI, how could Jamie suddenly betray the White House? However, Ross didn't think much. As soon as he hung up, he suspected Xu might be a traitor. Things were getting dicey. If those three were traitors, Peter couldn't imagine the world. Ultimately, Ross's insistence led Peter to compromise. He told Xu they'd go to the White House at 10 a.m. next day, but hid on a hillside overnight. He wanted to see if the killer pursued them. With the deputy director's death and the hard drive's trace, this forced the power center at the White House to convene an emergency meeting, with the intelligence department yielding no. The president could only send everyone else away, but Xu remained. He knew nothing about Ross' aunt and uncle, yet he was the one responsible for this case. He wanted to ask the president what happened to handle it properly and protect the living. After pondering, after a long night with no results, Peter gloomily explained that he had dialed Xu's private number. If Xu truly was the mole, the potential consequences could be absolutely disastrous. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to our channel.